There's a lot in that small statement from Proverbs 14. I'll try and touch on some of them. And I also slightly beg your indulgence today, because I'm going to try and make sense, but I might. And I'm going to try and explain how I feel what happened in the attempt to change the Constitution in the Republic on Friday. That's the Irish Constitution. You don't have to worry about it because you don't have a written constitution and you live under common law. But in the Republic of Ireland, in their wisdom, in 1937, Eamon de Valera, who was then Taoiseach, decided to introduce this document, Bunreacht na hÉireann, which means Constitution of Ireland. And it has been amended over and over to reflect the changing norms of society throughout the ages. Now, Friday, as I mentioned, was International Women's Day, and it was celebrated around the world, but it was also celebrated in Belfast. And central to that was the unveiling of two statues outside City Hall. One was Mary Ann McCracken and the other was Winifred Carney. Both formidable women and very much involved in the changes of their time. Mary Ann McCracken was a woman who fought against slavery and fought for women's rights, and to my knowledge was a member of our First Presbyterian Church in Rosemary Street, and there is a pew referred to as the McCracken pew in that church. So it was a statue unveiled to Mary Ann McCracken. And indeed, you could do a whole sermon, you could do a whole lecture on Mary McCracken, but I'm just going to touch on it to that extent. The other was Winifred Carney, who was the secretary, was a member of Cumann, which was a citizens' army, women's branch of the citizens' army, and she was James Connolly's secretary in the 1916 rebellion in Dublin. And she was one of the first people, first woman, or one of two women, Countess Markovich and herself, who stood for election on the platform of Sinn Féin before Irish independence. She didn't win a seat. Later on she fell out with Sinn Féin and she joined the Northern Ireland Labour Party and she married an Orange man, not one man. Yeah, she married one Orange man. I can't remember his name, but he was a renowned trade unionist. So that's those two women, and their statues were unveiled on the grounds of City Hall on Friday, and well worth a visit. In the Republic, they did something completely different on Friday for International Women's Day. They held a double referendum to change Article 41 of the Constitution. Now, as I said, this was a constitution presented by Eamon de Valera in 1937 and was accepted then by popular vote. And it was supported by the Catholic Church. And it was also perceived by many people later on as being a very conservative document in part. Although having said that, there's a lot in it that guarantees people their rights living in the Irish Republic. And there were 4 sections to Article 1 which were being changed, dealing with the definition of the family and care in the home. However, the one I'm just going to deal with this morning, I want to mention, is dealing with care in the home and the mention of women and mother. And all the major parties, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Sinn Féin, and even some of the smaller parties, came in behind a yes vote, demanding that that would be changed, seeking that that would be changed. The article dealing with women and mother in the home. Now I'm going to read you this, and I must say, mostly as a young man and a young activist on rights relating to everybody, I would have felt strongly opposed to the wording in the Constitution which I'm going to read. But I've reflected on it, and I have, to a large extent, changed my mind. And this is what it says in the Constitution. In particular, the state recognizes that by her life within the home, woman gives to the state a support without which the common good cannot be achieved. The state shall, therefore, endeavour to ensure that mothers shall not be obliged by economic necessity to engage in labour to the neglect of their duties in the home. Now, most people who see themselves as progressive and liberal particularly found difficult the neglect of her duties in the home. And they usually misquoted that in public by saying that the Constitution said a woman's place is in the home. And as you can hear from the wording, it never said that. It never said that. And in a way, in a poetic way, when you think again about it, it has a certain symmetry with Proverbs 14. Homes are made by the wisdom of women, but are destroyed by foolishness. And as I said, it never said that a woman's place was in the home. But however, most people regarded it as extremely conservative wording in today's world. And yet in some way, it can be seen as pro-women. The various Irish governments never lived up to that constitutional imperative, but in many ways forced both parents into the workplace. Now, in many ways, it doesn't matter which parent might have chosen to stay in the home, or maybe both parents would have wanted to go to work. But it was a promise made to families that a parent could stay in the home, and out of necessity regarding income would not have to go to work. The state never held up that promise. And for economic reasons, mostly related to the cost of living, but mostly related to mortgages for property. Many women who would have liked to stay at home, or indeed other parents may have, were forced to enter the workplace. And there was a clear symmetry between both parents going to work and the cost of housing going up in the Republic. Don't just take my word for it. Ask an economist and they will tell you that you could see clearly that change. And what's important about this is, why did the Irish people, 80% to 20%, vote to retain those words in the Irish Constitution? Why? And I keep asking myself that question. Why? Everybody I spoke to when I was down there on Friday and previous days, were telling me they were going to vote no. And by the way, these were not all conservatives or devout Catholics, even though the church was on the side of a no vote. They were people who had been involved in the issue around women's right to choose. They were people who were around the issue of equal marriage, same-sex marriage. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them. But 80% of the Irish people, now the turnout was low, but 80% chose to reject the government and the main opposition party, Sinn Féin, and their call to vote yes, and voted no. And I may not be correct on this, but I think to some extent at the heart of it was the taking out of that article, mother and woman. Mother and woman. Because in the Constitution, the only place that mother and woman are mentioned is in that article. And Irish people thought, even though they might agree completely with the wording of the article, they thought this is a little bit of wokeism too far. And they wanted mother and woman retained, even though they might not fully agree with all the wording of the article. And I've read about the reports coming in. Now, there was the issue around care, where the state, the wording was going to change, but it was going to change to the carer in the home. And that was even rejected by people who work in the business of caring, including one senator, who's Tom Conan, who felt very, very strongly about this, because he said the state was just changing the language, we're offering nothing. And he led a campaign to vote no, because he has a son who has severe disability. And he felt all the state was saying was, let's show we're more liberal than anybody else, we're more woke than anybody else. We've just changed the wording, but we won't offer anything. We won't offer a better caring service, no responsibility. We'll just look how cool we are. And I think, I might be wrong, and I'd love to have this discussion with loads of people, anyone here who wants to have it with me. I think that's why the Irish people said, no, we're not changing it in their wisdom. And I'll tell you why I think that, because the Irish people are a compassionate people. And I remember going on the radio the day after the referendum on same-sex marriage. And when I was on Sunday Sequence, I was asked would I go through all the arguments again. I said, when the people of Ireland, of the Republic of Ireland, had voted for same-sex marriage, not because they'd all become liberal or woke, but because they were compassionate. And there was even a bus travelling around Dublin called Grannies for Gay Marriage. Grannies for Gay Marriage. And what they were women who said, let's be a compassionate society. Let's vote for the right of couples, same-sex couples, to enjoy the institution of marriage in the same way the rest of us do. And I think that was the response that the government got from the Irish people on Friday. That the Irish people clearly said, we are not taking the mammy out of the Constitution. That's what they said. Leave the mammy where she is and do not take her out. So on that note, we celebrate the Mammy's Day today, Mother's Day. And on Mother's Day, we tell our moms how great they are. And we remember with great affection, like in my own case, my mum's incredible warmth and generosity, now that she's passed on. Sometimes I didn't see that as a youngster. When I was 16, I knew everything. When I was 16, I knew everything needed to change the world. And my mother knew nothing. And she used to say to me, sit down and cool your porridge and eat it. Now I know one thing, even on that, she was right. But on nearly everything, she was right. And I look back and reflect. And I think the Irish people were right to say the mammy is staying in the Constitution. The pluralist approach, in my opinion, is the right one. Not to completely remove all language, Not to completely remove all the words out of our hymns and out of our prayers because they don't reflect today's norms. They are poetry. We wouldn't take a Seamus Heaney poem and tear it apart and say, this is the way it should speak to us today. They are poetry. And we accept them like that. My understanding is you conserve what is valuable and you change what is necessary. And I'm delighted to see the Irish people agree with me and not Leo Varadkar. I don't believe it is wise to rid ourselves of everything that we think is archaic. It's archaic, let's throw it out. Let's be all modern. The Irish people seem to understand that and gave a severe lesson to the political establishment. This was to reflect the changing face of Ireland and to be more progressive. That's what they were told. And the Irish people knew what is solid, what is good, you hold on to. I read recently by a very wise man who said, the enemy of liberalism is too much liberalism. And I thought that was profoundly brilliant. The enemy of liberalism is too much liberalism. Whatever the context that people believed, it was prudent to keep mother and woman in the Constitution. So today, people in the Republic are wishing their moms Happy Mother's Day, not Happy Carers Day, Happy Mother's Day, with all that that means. So I wish all of you here, whatever your family, whatever your circumstances, Happy Mother's Day. Amen.